Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Tony-nominated Broadway star Laura Osnes performs live at Maryland Hall in Annapolis, Maryland on Saturday, July 29th. She joined me to discuss her career from winning the TV reality show You're the One That I Want to begin her Broadway career in Grease, leading to a pair of Tony nominations for Bonnie and Clyde and Cinderella. Hey, Laura Osnes. Hey, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP in DC.
Hi, Jason. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, we're talking because you're coming to perform at the Maryland Hall in Annapolis on July 29th, and you're calling it Cabaret in Concert. So, so I'm imagining, what is it, like a cabaret show with a jazz ensemble? And are you like singing American songbook stuff, or is it going to be like the greatest hits of your different Broadway shows, or what do we got?
No, that's exactly it. We're doing a night of American jazz standards, George Gershwin, Cole Porter, Duke Ellington, and I'll be accompanied by the Unified Jazz Ensemble, which is a 5-piece jazz band. So we're basically singing standards that you will know and love from the 20s, 30s, and 40s.
That sounds fantastic. And a lot of our, folks in the DC area will probably recognize you because you've done some Kennedy Center shows before. Yes. I think you even performed at the Kennedy Center Honors in 2011. But, you did some Capitol 4th stuff, the July 4th thing in 2017 and 2021. So, yeah, I mean, just reference the DC side of it, like, why is it such a special, place to play here in the DC? Well, I guess in this case, Maryland, Annapolis, but, the general DMV area. Why is it so cool to keep coming back?
Yes, it is one of my favorite places to visit. And as you said, I've been very involved with the Kennedy Center. I've done a bunch of concerts there with the National Symphony. Performed at the Kennedy Center Honors 3 times. I've done a Capitol 4th 3 times as well. And I just love it there. And I'm thrilled for this opportunity to get to bring a little bit of Broadway and jazz to the Maryland area.
Awesome. I love it. Well, whenever I have someone famous from the theater world on, I love to sort of hear your origin story, because I'm sure a lot of, there's the local, aspiring actors and playwrights and whatever in the area that love to hear how you got started. So I know you were born in Minnesota, grew up in like the St. Paul suburbs-ish. What were some of the early roles? Wasn't there like a Wizard of Oz, something in like 2nd grade or something?
Yes. Very good. You've done your research. My first show I ever did, I played a Munchkin in the Wizard of Oz, and the theater bug bit, I really fell in love with theater, and I got to play Dorothy later on in my youth. And then I went to college for musical theater, but only for a year in Wisconsin, and just knew it's what I wanted to do. I got offered a job opportunity back in Minneapolis to work at a theater there for a year, and then ended up winning a TV reality show that cast me as Sandy in Grease on Broadway when I was 21.
Oh, I have to ask you about that. It is the NBC reality show Grease, You're the One That I Want. It was in 2007. How did you hear about auditioning? Memories of, winning with Max Crumb as Danny? Give me the goods on You're the One That I Want.
I actually heard about it in the newspaper, in the Star Tribune, I believe, in the Minneapolis Star Tribune. And my aunt had found it, and I worked it out with the director of, I was actually playing Sandy in a dinner theater production of Grease in Minnesota at the time. And the director let me out for a weekend to fly to LA and audition. And I kept making it past the next levels, and then ended up competing live on TV for 2.5 months, and then won the competition. So it was a crazy experience. I was young and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and eager for the opportunity, and I can't believe my Broadway dream came true.
Yeah, and that answered my question. I was going to say, did you just binge watch Grease over and over again with Olivia Newton-John and learn Hopelessly Devoted and Summer Nights and all that stuff? But I guess you kind of already had, because you're doing the dinner theater. So that's
I was already playing the role. And I think, as an actor, you always want to pay, homage to the ones that came before you. And Sandy is such an iconic role. Grease is such an iconic show. But I'm not Olivia Newton-John. And at the end of the day, I felt like, yes, I had seen the movie multiple times and wanted to bring the essence of her performance, but also bring a lot of myself to it. And just trust that I was cast for a reason, and I was very right for this role. And that proved to be a good method to go by, because especially for the reality show experience, America wants to get to know the person as well. And I think that was important in how, that big break started for me. Was America got to fall in love with Small Town Sandy, was my nickname on the show, because I was from, a smallish town, a suburb of Minneapolis. And so I think, that was a lot of it was bringing myself to the role as well.
I love it. Well, one final Grease question, the actual dream come true of getting to do it on Broadway, because, that's the big prize of winning the reality shows. You get cast on to go on Broadway for the
Right.
revival in '07. So what was it like actually being on stage and, introducing a new generation to the wonder that is Grease?
It really was amazing. I mean, I was 21. I had always wanted to be on Broadway, getting like entrance applause and getting to go to the stage door and meet people, fans after the show that had voted for me on TV and getting a chance to thank them. Because honestly, we were voted in. America called in and voted. So I have a lot to owe to the American public and the fans that followed my journey. And, I'd been doing theater my whole life, and Broadway just felt like the pinnacle of getting to share those gifts and do what I loved. It was really special.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure there were a ton of people that watched the show that then went and bought tickets and made a trip to Broadway. So actually very smart on the producer's part as well.
Totally.
And sadly now we've lost Olivia Newton-John too. So you're gonna carry the legacy on all the different Sandys.
Exactly. I'm very honored that was the kind of the launching pad for my Broadway career. I got to live in New York for 15 years and continue on. And now I'm in Nashville. So I'm excited to get to come back up to the Northeast for this
Awesome.
concert.
I'd love to hit some of the other big Broadway roles really quick, move through them pretty quickly if you have time. So after the revival of Grease, of course, you do the 2009 Broadway revival of South Pacific in the role of Nellie. Was it, looking back, was it big for you to sort of prove that you weren't just some, a one-time reality show winner that made it to Broadway off of that you had another huge role. South Pacific is massive, that you were sort of here to stay and you were going to, could sustain this as a full-on Broadway career.
That's really well said. I do feel like getting to do South Pacific was my legitimizing moment. Like people finally took me seriously. Not that they didn't before. I worked hard during Grease and felt like I had a lot to prove though, coming from a reality show. You're absolutely right. And I feel like getting to assume the role of Nellie Forbush following the brilliant Kelly O'Hara was really the thing that people finally took me seriously. And I had a series of 4 auditions for that role. I was not handed that role. I definitely had to prove myself in the audition room, and was so grateful and honored to get to assume that role while Kelly was on maternity leave.
Oh, that's awesome stuff. And I even think you kept it when she returned from maternity leave a little bit too, right?
I did. I got to do it for 7 months while she was away, and then she returned and finished out her contract for a couple months, and then they asked me back, and I assumed the role till almost the end of the run, another six or 7 months. So it was very special, and the show was so beautiful, Tony Award winning. I felt like I grew up getting to play Nellie, and I grew from being a girl to being a woman.
Absolutely. And you continued to grow. Your career was moving on and continuing to get good roles with the 2011 Broadway revival of Anything Goes. You were sharing a stage with some legends, Sutton Foster,
Yes.
Joel Grey. I mean, are you just geeking out the entire time? Are you just like watching them and trying to take tips, and then all of a sudden you have to say, oh crap, I gotta remember my line?
100%. I remember the first read through of the script on the first day of rehearsal, and I was sitting 2 chairs down from Sutton Foster and hearing her iconic voice sing those songs. I also grew up emulating Sutton, and I had seen her in several of the shows that she had done before I moved to New York. So she was always an inspiration of mine, and finally getting to work with her was so wonderful. And Joel as well. And then Jessica Walter played my mother. If anybody ever watched Arrested Development, she was the mom, Lucille Bluth, on Arrested Development, and she was just a hoot. We had so much fun.
Oh yeah, everyone, TV fans will. That's an iconic role.
Yeah.
They'll know her. All right, I have to ask you about Bonnie and Clyde going to Broadway. And Jeremy Jordan, the great Jeremy Jordan as Clyde. And I mean, I guess they earned your first Tony nomination now. But like, what had you seen? The Faye Dunaway, Warren Beatty, then the 1967 gangster movie classic. And were you like kind of skeptical, like how are we going to make this into a musical? But lo and behold, you get a Tony nod for it.
Yes. Like I said with Sandy earlier, where Bonnie is another kind of one of those iconic characters. Everybody has an expectation in their mind as to who they think this woman should be. And Faye Dunaway really set the way for that. But the cool thing about Bonnie is that she's an actual human in history, and we were able to do a lot of research about who these people actually were, and not just the Hollywoodized version of them in the movie that you were mentioning. So yes, pay homage to Faye, but I didn't really base any of my performance off of hers. I really just wanted to I wanted to do my research about the history of who this human being was and their actual adventures, and bring that person to life more so than copy a performance from a film.
Were you ecstatic when Tony nomination day came, or even going to the actual awards too? Like, it must have been like, wow, I made it.
Yeah, it was really crazy. The show was actually not that much of a critical success. We only ran for 2 months on Broadway, but it has become a cult classic and has a huge fan following. The music is absolutely amazing. The timing of it didn't work well critically for us. But so the show had closed actually, and I got a surprise Tony nomination like 5 months later, and I was very surprised. And I was just walking on air that whole Tony season, getting to, attend the events and feel like I was just a part of honoring excellence in American theater. And I think the pressure was off because I kind of knew I wasn't going to win. I was just honored to be nominated that year. And it was a great experience, and kind of like icing on the cake to a show that was so special that I got to originate, but didn't really feel like it got its fair run.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I guess maybe it like overachieved a little in the Tony nomination then by getting nominated for a show that already closed. But that's a credit to you though. We robbed.
Thank you. It's true. It is kind of like that where you're like, oh my goodness, this was just a nice like, like I said, icing on the cake, the cherry on top of going, wow, the show is not even still running, and they remembered my performance, and that it meant a lot.
Yeah, that says something. All right. And then real quick, then we move into, let's call it the Rodgers and Hammerstein era of your career, because you did the Sound of Music Carnegie Hall concert performance as Maria. But then the big one, of course, was their Cinderella on Broadway, yes, where you get another Tony nomination. Both, if you could, two-parter on that one, getting to sing at Carnegie freaking Hall for Sound of Music and then get to do their Cinderella on Broadway. That is a 1-2 punch that people dream of.
Oh, absolutely. I like, one of the highlights of my entire career is that one night concert of The Sound of Music. It was one night. We rehearsed for like a week and a half. I played opposite Tony Goldwyn as Captain Von Trapp. And that score is iconic. I have loved Julie Andrews from when I was a very young girl, and definitely Sound of Music was a movie I grew up watching. I played Brigitte in community theater, one of the Von Trapp kids, when I was like 10. And so this felt like a full circle moment, getting to sing this score with a full orchestra at Carnegie Hall. I was pinching myself. My family flew in from Minnesota. So many people came in for this one night thing because it was so special. And then Cinderella was also, it sounds super cliche. I keep saying this was like a dream come true, but we developed Cinderella for like 2 years before it finally came to Broadway. And it just was neat to be a part of that developmental process of, yes, the story is, one that everyone knows. And again, another character that comes with great expectations, but our script was completely rewritten and kind of modernized. So it felt like we were doing a new twist on a classic story, and it was neat to get to put my stamp on that role for sure.
Yeah, and what people might forget, you passed the glass slipper to one Carly Rae Jepsen of Call Me
Yes!
Maybe. I bet the first time you heard that bop on the radio or online or Spotify or whatever, I guess that wasn't around at the time, iTunes in 2013.
Right.
I bet you didn't know that would be, your not understudy, but
predecessor. Predecessor, essentially. Yeah, no, definitely not. I was actually very excited when I found out that she was going to be cast. I obviously knew the song, I knew who she was, and I was curious to see what she was going to be like as a person. And I will tell you straight out, she is the kindest, most genuine, down-to-earth human being. She got me a huge bouquet of flowers on my closing night, and we've continued to remain in contact here and there over the years. And it's been so cool to just see her star continue to rise, and I wish her nothing but the best.
And when you stay in contact, is it like Call Me Maybe? Or I had to say it. I couldn't. I had to.
Good
That's
one.
terrible,
that was good.
No, bad one. But I couldn't help myself. All right. And then we got to talk about Bandstand on Broadway 2017, working with Corey Cott. I mean, yeah, all these names of people you're working with is incredible on its own, but just memories of Bandstand really quick.
Yeah, I was very just lucky. I got paired opposite many amazing guys, and Corey and I are also still great, great friends. Bandstand was special because it was completely original. There is no movie. There was no book of this. There is no preconceived notion of what this is. And I got to create the role of Julia Trojan from the ground up. And I really, really feel like it was catered around me and who I was and what I brought to the role. And it was very rewarding. it was a show about a group of World War II vets that returned from the war and start a swing band. And I played a war widow, a woman who had lost her husband. And again, we did so much research. I connected with multiple Gold Star wives to hear their story. And we had veterans come to the show, and we would honor them backstage, bring them backstage. And we had a veterans wall backstage with photos. We dedicated each show to a vet. And it was just, we felt like we were part of something larger than ourselves. And people were not just coming to be entertained, but to somehow be like healed and really moved through this production in particular. And it was, yeah, one of the most fulfilling things I've gotten to do.
That's awesome. Well, you've been generous with your time going through all these theater roles. But before we run really quick, it opened some opportunities to do television. I guess kind of coming full circle. You started on a TV reality show, and then you go off and do all this Broadway stuff, and then suddenly you get cast in some big shows like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and you even got to play Shirley MacLaine in Fosse Verdon.
Yes.
Do you just pop on The Apartment? How do you play Shirley MacLaine?
Great question. I actually had to do a lot of research too. The kind of crazy thing about that role was it was one day on set. I was in one small scene and I had just a moment. So it was really fun to just have the whole get the hair and makeup done to look like her for a minute. But I really only had, I think, 3 or 4 lines. But it was so cool. I was like, oh my gosh, I get to play this again, iconic person in history, and get to say that I've like checked that off my bucket list. And again, working with, Michelle Williams on set for a day, and it was crazy. It was unreal experience.
That's awesome. And then of course around holiday time, people remember, Homecoming for the holidays and One Royal Holiday on Hallmark. I think you're with Victoria Clark, who just won a Tony a couple weeks ago.
Yes, indeed. You've done, your Broadway research. I played opposite Aaron Tveit, who was also nominated for Tony for Moulin Rouge. And there were quite a few Broadway people. We shot in Connecticut, so I think they pulled from the New York talent.
Yes, those Hallmark holiday stuff. While not maybe as acclaimed as a Mrs. Maisel or whatever, I'm telling you that's job security, and those will be watched over and over and over again every holiday. That's like longevity right there.
There is definitely an audience for the Christmas movies, and I've had such a joy, getting to make them and be in that circle. And because I come from the stage, I like any TV film experience has been, I feel like, such a learning time for me that I feel like I grow every time I get to make one of those movies. And you really just have so much fun. You get to celebrate Christmas kind of all year round. You're shooting usually in July or August, maybe September, and then the movie comes out at Christmas time, and you feel like you've gotten to celebrate Christmas for half the year.
Yeah, Christmas in July. All right. Well, final seconds, and we'll cut you loose. You've been so generous. Final seconds, like bringing it full circle. Like you talked about how you had that, you sort of grew up in the Midwest and Minnesota and did the Oz role. Do you feel like you sort of did a Dorothy yourself? Like, you went off to Broadway, and then your parents from Oz, from the Midwest. I guess it's not Kansas. It's
Sure.
Minnesota, but follow my analogies. They got to fly into New York to see your stuff. Like, do you ever sort of feel like that over the rainbow thing?
Definitely. I think I've been so blessed to have, such incredible opportunities and get to really live out that Broadway dream that I had. And as you said, now like stepping into TV film stuff, I just finished another Christmas movie a couple weeks ago, filming one. And I feel so grateful, and getting to do concerts like this. I started songwriting and writing music. I released an EP last year. Like there's all these other ways that I'm finding to be creative. And I'm so grateful for the support of my family, through the years. I really could never have done it without them. And yeah, I often equate it to an over the rainbow story, or even a Cinderella story. Not that I was rags to riches, by any means, but just that of those golden opportunities that came, that really allowed me to kind of do what I love and get to share the gifts that I feel that I was given at a young age. So it's been a blessing.
Love it. Plug the EP real fast. Where can we find it? What's it called?
Oh, you can find it anywhere. It's on Spotify, it's at iTunes. If you follow me on social media, my handle is at Laura Osnes, my name, Osnes, and it's in my link tree. You can stream it everywhere, and it's called On the Other Side.
On the Other Side. Awesome. Well, yeah, everyone listening to this, you can, pull up that EP and listen to that on your way to Annapolis to check out Laura Osnes for Cabaret and Concert at the Maryland Hall in Annapolis on July 29th. Get your tickets now. Hey, thanks so much for doing this. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Jason. You did your research so well. I'm honored to get to chat with you. And thanks for helping plug our show. Hope to see you all there.
All right. Be well. See ya.
Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.